All right, welcome back to the LeaderLink podcast. This is your host, Charles Heasley, and today I'm excited to share a special episode. We've talked a lot about leadership development. Is it worth it? What makes a good program? How can things be improved? But today I want to talk about the ROI. Is it worth it? And there's different estimates out there, but the organizations are spending a lot of money on leadership development, and we've talked about how sometimes they're doing it wrong, sometimes they're evaluating it wrong, and we've talked about ways to improve those things. But I'm excited for this episode in particular because I just got done with my data collection for my dissertation, and it was all about evaluating the effectiveness of leadership development. And one of the things I was really interested in learning was what are the outcomes? What are the changes in a leader's behavior? How does that influence the team? And how does that influence the organization as a whole? And the results were actually pretty cool. There were some managers who maybe were even a little bit skeptical about the process of leadership development, but the language they were using, and then when I got to talk to their employees, which was probably even the cooler part, I got to talk to the people who reported to the managers as well. And hearing from them, long story short, it works. And there's always ways that it can improve and get better, but long story short is it works. And it was really cool to hear real live stories from the front line. So when people think of the return on investment for leadership development, a lot of times the first thing that comes to mind is the financial, right? Is our productivity improving? Are we saving staff? Are we limiting turnover? Are we hiring the right people? Are we keeping the right people? And so a lot of when organizations spend money on leadership development, a lot of times they may evaluate it by looking for that financial return. And yes, that is one of the returns, but I think what matters even more is how we get to the return. So the leader goes through a training, then something happens, and then we get the return on investment. So I want to spend a little bit of time just on that middle part. When leaders go through leadership development programs and they get done with them, more often than not, what I hear, what I've seen is that the evaluation is done what they refer to as a smile sheet. In other words, did the person who went through the program like the program? Did they think it was engaging? Did they like the presenter? And while all of those things are important, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, what matters is that they get some practical tools that they can go implement in the organization in real time to get these results that ultimately lead to strong financial returns. So what changes, right? So number one, if a return on investment from leadership development that may not have an easily quantifiable dollar amount attached to it right away is better decisions. When leaders have better decision-making processes, then the likelihood of poor decisions, which can be very costly, those will be reduced. And similar to that, faster decisions. One of the challenges that many people face, and this is human nature. This is not. I'm not trying to call anyone on the carpet here. This is human nature. We tend to avoid making decisions when we don't have all the information. That's a fact of life. There's many decisions we'll need to make with incomplete or imperfect information. But when leaders wait to make a decision, they often become the bottleneck in their organization, or one of the bottlenecks, and an enormous amount of time gets wasted. A poor or A flawed decision that is well executed will always be better than a perfect decision that is imperfectly executed. Basically, what all that means is that sometimes leaders are going to have to make decisions in order to get the ball rolling. And it's better to do that and then learn and tweak and adjust as we go along than it is to delay. So, one of the outcomes from leadership development is faster decisions. A third outcome that should come from leadership development is delegation. I've had many stories of people who I get to work with that have grown up in the organization. They've promoted multiple times, and they've never been taught how to delegate. So they struggle to give up some of those tasks, whether it's they don't necessarily know how to delegate, they don't want to delegate, they think it's going to take too much time. There's a lot of reasons why people say they don't delegate. But what ends up happening when they do delegate, it frees them up to work on their high payoff activities. And high payoff activities are the things that a person at any level does that drives performance in the organization. So if they are wasting time doing things that other people on their team can be doing, then they're, number one, doing a disservice to their team, but they're also doing a disservice to the organization, which is also going to lead to some leader burnout, which we'll get to in a minute. So the fourth one is, I think one of the keys from any leadership program that I've ever taught is feedback. When it comes to the different kinds of feedback, we've covered that in a different podcast. What most leaders do is they don't do enough feedback. They kind of have that attitude of, you won't, if you're not hearing from me, then you're doing okay. And that actually slows teams down, because instead of thinking, oh, I'm just doing okay, they're thinking, wait a minute, I don't want to mess up, so I'm just going to play it safe and do basically the bare minimum. They're not necessarily consciously thinking this, but that's what ends up happening, is that they withhold some of their greatest thinking power and doing power because they're worried that they're going to mess up. So proper feedback is a key outcome of leadership development that does affect the ROI, because it ties directly into productivity. If teams get regular feedback that says you're doing a great job, keep going, then they know, okay, I'm on the right track. If we're waiting until the performance evaluation to tell them, well, you need to work on this or that, then we're wasting a ton of time and money in productivity. So feedback is a critical outcome of effective leadership development that moves the financial needle forward. Another outcome of leadership development that shows up in leader behaviors is psychological safety. One of the keys to any kind of effective development program is going to be the creation of some emotional intelligence, some self-reflection. And so psychological safety is one of those, it's kind of like emotional intelligence. It kind of gets a bad rap in some cases, but they're essential, they're critical. Psychological safety is one of those critical elements for an organization to have, because it basically means that people feel safe speaking up when they see an issue or when they make a mistake. And leaders don't necessarily, it's not that they don't want to create a psychologically safe environment, but when they're not equipped to make their people feel safe, then people tend to withhold information because they're afraid of the reaction that leader is going to give them. If something's not going to be on time, if they don't have the right resources, if there's an issue with somebody in another division that is slowing things down, if none of these issues are brought to the leader's attention, because the person doesn't feel safe to do so, that has a real financial impact on the organization. So psychological safety would be the fifth real clear return on investment that I could give you for leadership development. The next one, let's move on number 6 here. Clear expectations. Clear expectations. It almost amazes me, and I've done this now for enough years where I've learned to not necessarily be surprised by this, but it amazes me that most people are not provided with clear expectations. It's just not a thing. Some leaders do it. I'm proud of them, but there are many people and on the front line, and there's many people in leadership roles who have never learned how to set expectations or have never been given expectations. When you don't have clear expectations, it's kind of like when you don't have clear feedback. You're uncertain, and so you make guesses, and there's confusion. It might lead to a problem in the job, which means you have to rework something that costs time and money. We've talked ad nauseum about expectations in another episode, but clear expectations, the sixth clear outcome for leadership development that drives financial results. Seventh one, I'm seeing this more and more. I'm having a lot of conversations with companies recently about the leadership pipeline. They're growing so fast, especially in the construction industry in North Texas. They're growing so fast that people are getting promoted to positions of leadership who are fairly new in the organization. They don't have a ton of tenure, but because of the rate of growth, they're having to build this pipeline. And really, they're not even, a lot of them aren't even building the pipeline. They're just taking the person that seems the best, that has the best potential, and they're just putting them in these roles. And it's causing a lot of stress and a lot of burnout because if these people aren't ready to step into that role, they're going to just wing it. They're going to guess. And in a lot of businesses, again, I don't fault anyone for this necessarily. It's the way they grew up. Most people, when they get promoted, historically have just been told, congratulations, we're counting on you, figure it out. That's how a lot of leadership development internally happens. It's non-existent. So one of the really clear financial outcomes from leadership development is the building of a pipeline where these people aren't necessarily having to figure everything out for themselves, and they can do some of the things we've already talked about: set expectations, give feedback, create a psychologically safe environment, and so forth. All right, the next one is really something that is kind of a byproduct of our society's tendency to promote people and just say, figure it out. Gallup, a research firm, has consistently put out stats that say about 50% of the workforce is stressed and burnt out, and they're looking for other jobs. But if you read the report even further, it shows you that managers carry more stress and burnout than frontline staff. And that's because they are often promoted into this role. They're promoted because they're good at the job, but they're not given the opportunities to learn and develop. They're having to guess at it. They're being told, congrats, you're promoted, we're counting on you, good luck. And then they're now dealing with the pressures from middle and upper management, but they're also dealing with issues on the front line, and they're trying to figure out what it is that they're supposed to be doing. So it's very stressful. So leadership development has real financial outcomes on burnout because it gives these leaders a roadmap for what to do, how to manage your time, how to have those conversations, how to set expectations, all of those things where they're not just left guessing. The last ROI of leadership development, this isn't the last one, but just for time's sake for this episode, is courage. And this kind of goes back with feedback. Look, there's a lot of issues that happen in organizations because leaders don't have the hard conversations that they need to. And one of the financial outcomes of leadership development is when we have a leader who's equipped to recognize that there's an issue, understand that it is possible that this person wasn't given clear expectations, they weren't provided enough training, they haven't been given enough feedback, whatever the situation is. Maybe it's a structural or organizational limitation that is causing poor performance. I see this all the time, actually. When leaders have the courage to diagnose and take stock of what the issue is and then have that hard conversation with that employee, it saves jobs, it saves productivity, it saves headaches for plenty of outcomes on courage and courageous conversations. In my research, my data collection that I did, it was with a continuing care retirement community. So this is basically assisted living, memory care. Basically, it provides residents with access to care from assisted living to the end of life. And so it's a very high stress environment, a lot of burnout. And what was really cool when I got to talk to the leaders and the frontline staff is they all loved it there. Even as stressful as it was, they loved their job, and it was all about the residents. It was all about how do we serve the residents. And here's the key to leadership development. You want to talk about financial return on investment. I heard from the managers, I heard from the frontline staff, how the managers treat frontline staff, the behaviors, the attitudes, how they treat frontline staff, and making happy staff and fulfilled and respected, that translates directly to the outcome, to the residents, to the people who the staff interact with day in and day out. And what was beautiful about this, another outcome that I was not expecting in my research, but that I learned in the data collection, is that it goes to reputation. So this organization has such a strong reputation that people want to go work there and that people want to come live there. And so when we invest in our leaders to have these behavioral outcomes, provide feedback, give expectations, make it a psychologically safe environment, all these things we've talked about, what that ends up doing is it creates a reputation for the organization. This is the place to come work. This is the place where we want you to be, where you want to be a customer. And in this case, you actually go live there. That's your home. But this can work in any organization. You have a reputation for being the contractor that trades want to work with. You have the reputation for being the restaurant that people want to come spend their time and money with on a regular basis. It's really cool. I mean, to actually be in that room and hear the stories from these managers and staff, I'm telling you, leadership development works. And instead of asking the question, did the manager enjoy it? Let's take a deeper look and figure out what are the other ROIs that come out of this that actually do end up leading to financial outcomes. I'm excited to share more about my dissertation with you in the future. That's all for now, but I'm looking forward to seeing you next week.